We are going to talk now about ankle injuries in football. Ankle is one of the most commonest part of the body that gets injured in football. So, ankle injury is an extremely common injury in young soccer players, and the incidence increases with the advancing age. There is no intrinsic cause, there is no single intrinsic cause of injury. That means there is no one particular cause of injury, that particular mechanism or something. There are lots of other factors that contribute to the cause of injury. For example, functional strength, asymmetries of ankle flexor strength, hypermobility, increased BMI, increased body weight raises the propensity for ankle sprain in professional soccer players. I'm going to talk about basic anatomy. I'm not going to go in detail. I'm going to reveal the basic and important structure which we are going to be discussing on regarding ankle injury. First of all, is ankle complex is formed of three parts: talocrural joint, that is a true ankle joint; subtalar joint, that is formed between the talus and the calcaneum; and inferior tibiofibular joint, that is formed. The inferior tibiofibular joint is a syndesmosis type of joint, that is the two bony structures are connected by a syndesmosis membrane, interosseous membrane. Now some little gist of information about each of the joint. Talocrural joint is a synovial hinge joint between tibia, fibula and talus. Talus is a tenon within mortise of the tibia and fibula. It permits dorsiflexion and plantarflexion kind of movement. There is a single one uniplanar joint. It is means movement can happen, only two movements are permittable, it dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. Number 2 is a subtalar joint. Again, it's a synovial joint between talus and calcaneum. The movements permitted by this joint are inversion, eversion, anterior posterior gliding. Inferior tibiofibular joint is syndesmosis type of joint between the distal tibia and fibula by a fibrous membrane, also known as interosseous membrane. Ligaments. This is the most important structures that connects the bone in its and keep the bones and the joint in its proper position and shape. Basically, the ankle surrounds the joint are of three types, that is medial collateral ligament, lateral collateral ligament and distal tibiofibular syndesmosis complex. Okay, so our primary concern will be of the lateral collateral ligament. In the entire discussion, what we will be discussing of is mostly the lateral collateral ligament, because the lateral collateral ligaments are the ligaments which are mostly injured in football, because compared to the medial collateral ligament, because they are very strong ligament, and lateral collateral are comparatively weaker ligament. Lateral collateral ligament are again four types: anterior talofibular ligament, calcaneofibular ligament, posterior talofibular ligament and lateral talocalcaneal ligament. Medial collateral ligaments are of have two parts, superficial and deep has again posterior tibiotalar ligament and anterior tibiotalar ligament. These are the basic structures. As you can see, the anterior talofibular ligament extends from the tip of the fibular malleoli at the posterior edge of the fibula and inserts into the talus. Posterior calcaneofibular ligament, posterior tibiofibular ligament in the blue one, and in the red box we can see posterior inferior talotibial ligament on the back side, and in the front anterior inferior talofibular ligament. Range of motion, planes of motion, the movements occurring in the frontal plane, movements occurring in the sagittal plane and the movements occurring in the transverse plane. The movement occurring in the frontal plane is inversion and eversion. Movement occurring in the sagittal plane is dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. Movement occurring in the transverse plane is adduction and abduction. Now there are basically triplanar type of motion occurring. There is no single motion that occurs in the ankle joint and the ankle complex. It's a combination of three movements that occurs, and we call it either supination or pronation. Supination includes plantarflexion, inversion, adduction. Pronation includes dorsiflexion, eversion and abduction. Now, this is the thing which we need to understand, basically the biomechanics of running. We have found that it's not only the ankle joint that influences or the influences the mechanism of running, or the injured part of the ankle, or if the ankle is injured, we mostly focus on the ankle without giving too much of attention on the proximal and the distal component of the injury. It is seen that if the hallux dorsiflexion is limited, if you don't have sufficient amount of hallux dorsiflexion, your hip extension is compromised, the gluteus maximus function is compromised in running. So you need to work on ankle, as well as you need to see if you should supposed to have sufficient amount of hallux dorsiflexion. If you have sufficient amount of hallux dorsiflexion, you have good sum of first ray plantar flexion, subtalar joint inversion, ankle plantar flexion, tibial external rotation, knee extension, hip external rotation, and hip extension. So it has to be remembered, this is the entire kinetic chain that works when a person starts running. If you don't have hallux dorsiflexion, if you don't have the good function of the great toe, you cannot expect the athlete to be faster, can produce good sum of the muscle contraction during running from his gluteus maximus, because gluteus maximus can work when you have sufficient amount of range of hip external rotation. Supposingly, if the the foot is pronated, then the tibia, instead of going into external rotation, will internally rotate, the knee will internally rotate, your hip will internally rotate. So the gluteus maximus won't be able to function appropriately. The power and the strength of the gluteus maximus will be compromised. So you need to make sure that the athlete have a good biomechanics of running. If you need to see the videos of his running pattern and need to analyze that which athlete has a good biomechanics. Is it toe dorsiflexion is happening, is a hallux for dorsiflexion is having properly or not? Your start assessment should start from the great toe, then you can proceed further. Now the types of ankle sprain, that includes low ankle sprain, high ankle sprain. Low ankle sprain constitute of lateral ankle sprain, medial ankle sprain, and high ankle sprain is syndesmotic sprain, that is damage to the inferior tibiofibular ligament, that connects the tibia and fibula of the inferior tibiofibular joint. Some details about lateral ankle sprain is inversion in plantar flex foot. This is the basic mechanism of lateral ankle sprain. Basic mechanism involving this is inversion in plantar flex foot. Lateral ankle sprain accounts for around 80 to 85% of all ankle sprain. It is the most common ankle sprain. ATFL is the first common ligament injured following CFL. When you hear anything about lateral ankle sprain, just close your eyes and say yes, it has to be ATFL, because it is the first ligament gets injured in the lateral ankle sprain, followed by CFL and other ligaments. So if you don't know anything which ligaments are involved in ankle sprain, just remember this ligament, ATFL, anterior talofibular ligament, is the first ligament to get injured when there is any kind of inversion plantar flex foot injury. Medial ankle sprain is a forced eversion sprain, and it has to be very much good amount of force, a very strong force is required to injure this medial ligament of the ankle. It is also known as deltoid ligament, and it is one of the most strongest ligament in the body. So you need to have a very strong eversion force is required to tear up this ligament, and it accounts for around 5 to 10% of ankle sprain. High ankle sprain, when your foot gets eversion in a dorsiflex position, then this inferior tibiofibular ligament gets injured. It's account for 5 to 10% of ankle sprain. It may lead to chronic ankle instability and also recurrent ankle sprain and heterotropic ossification. These are the drawbacks what you say, if the injury is not treated appropriately, this three conditions will result. So you need to take a good care when you are doing rehabilitation, considering all these events can occur in future. Incidents, as you can see, one of the journal report systemic review and ankle injury in all sports, they say in football, that is in soccer, 21% of the all injuries happens is ankle. The most commonly injured body site in football is ankle, followed by knee, followed by thigh. So it's a good percentage of injury, and one of the most common injury happening currently in football, in soccer. Large-scale systemic review comprises of several studies from 38 different countries around the world revealed that ankle ranked the most frequently injured body part in sports, around 34%. This is another study which says that they have studied 38 different countries around the world in sports, and they say that of all injuries in sports, 34% is ankle injury. And they also say there is twofold increased risk of second ankle injury following the first injury within 1 year. So your rehab and injury prevention program has to be taken care of, because the injury risk is two times more following the first injury. That is, the recurrent injury chances of injury is very, very high. There is another study done examining the lower limb injuries among male amateur soccer players in Sheffield Hallam University, UK. The study was published in 2017 in the Journal of Yoga and Physical Therapy. They concluded that the lower limb injury accounts for around 76.7% of total injuries in football. That's a great percentage, and out of them, ankle sprain accounts for around 49.6% of total injuries. That's around 50% of the total injuries happening in football is of ankle sprain. And also they said that they found a strong correlation between duration of warm-up and injuries. If the duration of the warm-up is less, the chances of injuries they got is very, very high. So as a physio, as a trainer, we need to make sure that the players are getting adequate time to warm up before they start up the training or competition, because there is a strong correlation between duration of warm up and injuries. If the warm up is not happened appropriately in a good way, with spending good times on dynamic movement and functional movements, chances of injuries are always there. There is another study done, a Football Association Medical Research Program, an audit of injuries in professional football, the meta-analysis. This study was done in the English professional footballers in 2 consecutive seasons, and they have done a research considering the mechanism of injury, how the injury happened. In football, basically these are the movements which are very much common, and these are the movements performed by the footballer: landing, twist and turn, running, jumping, falling, shooting, heading, stretching, dribbling, passing, diving. Out of all the mechanism, the number one mechanism that leads to injury and maximum number of injury happened is the landing. The footballer, when jumps to take the heading the ball, and when he lands with an inappropriate landing techniques, they land in an inverted and plantar foot, leading to injury. Following twist and turn injuries, when they dribble, when they twist and turn, turning with the ball, they get injury, running, and so on. Next, what they have found is ankle sprain in different playing position. Now this is something really interesting. In the two consecutive season of the professional footballer, they found that the maximum ankle injury happened in defenders, followed by midfielder, followed by forward, and the least is goalkeeper, because the defenders in football are the one who takes maximum number of headers, and they jump, they take headings, and if they don't fall and they don't land with appropriate landing and jumping technique that led to injury, followed by midfielder, forward and goalkeeper. Ankle sprain in different age groups. As I mentioned in the my introduction part, in that the researcher says that ankle injury advances with age, but here in this study they have seen that the ankle injury actually goes down with the advancing age. So it's quite a debatable topic, that relationship between ankle sprain and age. Some studies say that it increases and some studies say that it decreases. That is, between 17 to 22 years of age, the ankle incidence of ankle injury is around 41%. In the current study they say that between this age group they found maximum age injuries, that is 41% injury happened in the 2 consecutive season in English football players is 41% in 17 to 22 years of age, 23 to 28 34% injuries, 29 to 34 years of age 21% injuries, and plus 35 is 3% injuries. Now during competition, during the 90 minutes of game, they say that the maximum injury happened is the last third of the first half and the last third of the second half. You can see that between 31 to 45 minutes of duration of the time, 25% injuries happened. Similarly, it's same between 76 to 90. This is, and the reason they said that this is the time where either of the team either defending the goal or going for attacking the goal, either they are defending or they are attacking. So this is the time when the intensity of the game is too high. The injuries are happening throughout the 90 minutes, but these are the 2 peak time where the injuries are maximum, because either the players are defending or attacking, either of the team is under pressure because they are coming to the end of the game. So this is the peak time of injury. About 50%, if you accumulate both the percentage, it's 50% of the total injuries happening in the game is between these 2 period. Grades of ankle sprain with signs and symptoms. So what are the signs symptoms of the ankle sprain are basically ligament tear, loss of functional ability, pain, swelling, ecchymosis and difficulty bearing weight. As the grade advances, the severity of the sign symptoms also increases. Ligament tear in grade 1 is none, and if it is there, it's a couple of fibers get teared, but severity is not so much. Grade 2 partial tear, and grade 3 is complete tear which needs surgical intervention. Loss of functional ability is minimal and maximum in, that is greatest in grade 3. Pain minimal in grade 1, grade 2 moderate, and grade 3 is very bad pain, very severe pain. Grade swelling minimal or no swelling. Sometimes you won't see swelling in grade 1 as well. Very minimal or no swelling. Grade 2 moderate amount of swelling, and grade 3 very severe swelling. Ecchymosis usually in grade 1 is not there, most common in grade 2 and grade 3. Difficulty weight bearing, grade 1, sometimes we see that there is no difficulty with bearing, but sometimes it happens the player avoids to walk with pain. Because of pain they don't want to put weight on the grade 1, even in grade 1, but most of the time they don't have difficulty. Grade 2 yes, and grade 3 definitely they have pain. Physical examination. What all the things you need to examine when the ankle got injured is, first of all, is the pain. Severity of the injury depends on the severity of injury. You need to assess the pain, how much the pain is. Swelling minimal to severe as per the grade. Loss of range of motion is very much obvious that the player won't be performing any range of motion of the ankle because it's of due to pain, and swelling does not permit. Tenderness. Normally in the lateral ankle sprain, the tendon is at antero-inferior to the lateral malleoli. If the tendon is over the anterior joint line, it may indicate sprain of interosseous membrane. Basically the inferior tibiofibular joint gets strained, that is anterior tibiofibular ligament must have injured, indicating of the pain of the inferior tibiofibular joint. Palpation. What are the structures you need to palpate? What are the bony marks you need to palpate? That is lateral and medial malleoli, fibula, and fifth metatarsal. MMT of the ankle joint depends. If the pain is too much, we cannot perform MMT. But even ankle in grade 1, yes, you can. Special tests. There are basically 4 special tests for ankle joint. Number 1 is the anterior draw test. That is basically sensitive to ATFL ligament. That checks the strength of the ATFL ligament. Talar tilt test, both for ATFL and CFL. External rotation test, that is for tibiofibular syndesmotic injury. If you suspect that the player is having syndesmotic injury or in the injury in the inferior tibiofibular joint, this test can be done. Squeeze test, again for the same inferior tibiofibular joint. Now, Ottawa's ankle rule. Now, what is this Ottawa's ankle rule? This is basically the rules or the conditions where you are suspected to when it's suspected to go for an X-ray. When you're supposed to go for an X-ray of the ankle or foot, this rules speaks. Pain, when there is a pain in the malleolar zone, when there is a bony tenderness at the posterior edge or tip of the malleoli or medial or lateral malleoli, you can go for an X-ray. When you are unable to bear weight immediately after the injury and 4 steps in emergency department or doctor's office, then these are the 3 rules which will give you the idea, yes, you can go for an X-ray. Similarly for the foot injuries as well, pain in the midfoot zone, bone tenderness at the base of the fifth metatarsal or at navicular, and number 3, unable to bear weight both immediately after injury and 4 steps in emergency department. Following this, if you suspect the severity of injury is more or there is something more investigation need to be done, you go for MRI, CT scan, bone scan, which will rule out any kind of fractures, but doesn't have any role in the initial evaluation of ankle sprain, doesn't have. So basic rehabilitation of ankle, when we are discussing on basic rehabilitation, it includes immediately Price protocol, taping, strengthening, proprioception, mobilization, agility and coordination, and plyometric. Basically you need to apply all this in a progressive way. These are all kind of rehab tools you have with which you can achieve the player from which we can achieve your goal and make the player back on the pitch from the injury. So you have to, means this goes on, this just goes on with your rehab program. It's up to the physiotherapist how you can imply all this in a way. Now I'm going to talk about each component in detail, what happens and what we need to do in each phase. That is a Price protocol. What does this Price stands for? P for protection, R for rest, I for compression, I for icing, C for compression, and E for elevation. Price protocol. This is to be taken with lot of seriousness and it should be applied immediately. Protection. Normally the ankle strap is recommended to allow movement in sagittal plane, that is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion movement can be allowed, limiting the frontal plane motion, that is inversion and eversion. Inversion and eversion movements are not allowed in immediately after following the injury because it may lead to worsen the injury. Normally taping should be incorporated for avoiding stress on the ligament injured, as avoiding inversion and eversion movement. Taping should be done. Let me show you some basic taping techniques. This is the basic taping techniques that you have. Put the ankle in a neutral position or in a little of dorsiflexion. Put the 2 anchors, strips. The strips which I was talking about, this is the strips. U-shape it from the inside of the foot to the outside, keeping the foot in a everted position so that the ligament gets relaxed and does not invert, so that the damage can happen more after the injury. Then you lock up the strips, then you apply different figure of 8, figure of 6, heel locks, and close on all the anchors. and it should be applied either by the physiotherapist or by a sports physician. I recommend not to be applied himself by the players, because they might apply in a wrong way and then may lead to increased swelling or damage to the blood circulation. Rest. About 24 to 40 hours or 48 hours of rest is required after injury for the inflammation to subside. During this time, they should also start with isometric exercises for ankle joint musculature to avoid atrophy. Normally when we talk rest, the players thinks that okay, I don't need to do anything, just lie on the bed doing nothing with the ankle. But no, start off with the isometric exercises. In some cases where the severity of the injury is not too much, and by the concerned physiotherapist or with the concern of physiotherapist, you can also start with active dorsiflexion plantar flexion exercises, and it should be pain free. You should not be doing any exercises that can damage the healing process. That is, inversion should not be happening in the ankle joint during this phase. Icing. Now this is something where I used to get most of the questions from the players. When to apply ice, how to apply ice, and how long you need to apply ice. The players will be asking you all these questions. Now I'll be giving the answer. Application of ice should be started immediately after the injury. Ice, if applied alone, it's okay, it will work, but if it is applied in conjunction with compression, it is the best thing you can do. Best thing. Compression and icing is the best thing that will help you to reduce the swelling. Not only swelling, it constricts the superficial blood flow to prevent hemorrhage, as well as in reducing hypoxic response to injury by decreasing cellular metabolism. So this will help in reducing inflammation. Minimum 20 minutes once in every 4 hours should be applied. To all the players I say 20 minutes in every 4 hours it has to be applied. Not more than 30 minutes ice be applied over superficial nerves. It may lead to nerve palsy. So that is, if you apply in the lower extremity, you should not apply for more than 30 minutes. If you are applying to the upper extremity, like where most superficial nerve, we have ulnar nerve over here in the lateral epicondyle, in the middle epicondyle, sorry. So it may lead to injury. Heat should not be applied after the injury, as it lead to increased swelling. Heat should not be applied. Heat should not be applied. Because why I am mentioning this point, because I have personally seen that after most of the injuries, heat is applied. Even I have seen wax bath being applied after the ankle sprain. That's the worst thing I have seen. So that's the reason I am saying that heat should not be applied after the injury, because when there is an injury in acute condition, there is a local increase in temperature, and if you add up more, it will lead to further increase in temperature and will lead to increased inflammation, and eventually swelling will also increase. So heat application is not at all an option, is not at all to be considered. Icing should be used during all phases of rehab. Most of the time the player says, okay sir, I am done with my 4 times 5 times a day exercise, I'm going out to play now, I'm returning to my play and everything is okay, I don't need to apply ice. No, it's not so true. You need to keep on applying ice. That's very, very important. And game ready is an effective ice compression modality. In India, most of the people can't afford to have this game ready. Basically it is feasible for game ready, mostly feasible for the academy, some academies, and mostly it is used in the leagues, that is in I League, IPL, Kabaddi. In those kind of leagues, basically we use this game ready, and it's a very, very effective modality, and especially in this acute phase. That is what we are talking about, ice with compression. Let me show you. This is the modality, and this is the basic ankle part, ankle set. Similarly, you can have what for the knee joint. Similarly, you have for thigh, your hip, your shoulder, your elbow have different corsets for that. Compression wrap should be applied following ankle injury. Compression is very important for reducing the swelling, and the most importantly, how to apply. It should be applied from distal to proximal, because if you apply from proximal to distal, the swelling won't go properly, because you need to push down the swelling towards the heart. The swelling should go towards the body. So from down to up, you need to go from down to up, from distal to proximal. To add more compression, a horseshoe felt pad may be inserted under a wrap over the area of maximum swelling, like this. You can see the horseshoe shaped foam pad is applied, covering over the sides of the lateral malleoli upwards. So when you compress it, it pushes the swelling towards the heart. Elevation. It is the essential part to control edema. Elevation allows gravity to work with lymphatic system rather than against it, and decreases the hydrostatic pressure to decrease fluid loss, and also assists venous and lymphatic return to gravity. Athletes with ankle sprain should be encouraged to maintain an elevation position as often as possible, particularly during first 24 to 48 hours following injury. So it is very, very important, because swelling is reducing swelling is very, very important. The faster the swelling goes, the better the recovery, or the lesser time for an athlete will take to recover from an ankle injury. So first of all, what we emphasize is ankle swelling, and swelling is an indicator of prognosis of the ankle sprain. So the priority should be given. Elevation, how much you need to elevate is above the heart level. Now, how to progress with the rehabilitation? That's another important area of concern. How to progress? The athlete should either partial or non-weight bearing, or perhaps partial weight bearing on crutches. Weight bearing has its own importance. A literature suggests that an early limited stress over the initial period of inflammation might promote faster and stronger healing. There are a lot of literature which says that weight stress is required over the injured part of the injured ligament to promote the healing process. Some studies also say that protected motion facilitate proper collagen reorientation and thus increasing the strength of the healing ligament. So stress is really important. Strengthening. Immediately after the injury, in the early phase of the rehabilitation, we can start with isotonic exercises for ankle dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and as the ligament heals further, the range of motion increases. Strengthening exercise can begin in all plane. Pain should be the basic guideline for deciding when to start inversion and eversion isotonic exercises. Light resistance with high repetition has fewer detrimental effects on ligament, that is 2 to 4 sets of 10 repetition. If you have isokinetic, has an advantage in that more functional speeds can be obtained in the movement. Proprioception and neuromuscular control, one of the most important exercise in ankle injury. Research says that 83% reduction in chronic ankle sprain after a program of proprioception exercises. 83, that's huge. There is Glecross and Thornton found that the greater ligamentous disruption, greater the proprioception loss. If your ligament as basically they are saying that as the severity of the increases, the greater the loss of proprioception. Early weight bearing reduces the proprioception loss. So how do you progress? Initial standing on both feet with eyes closed, with progression to stand on one leg is an exercise to recoup the proprioception. Standing on a stable surface, progress to standing on unstable surface like Boshu ball, wobble board and ankle disc helps in developing proprioception. Functional progression. Progression begins early in the rehabilitation process as athlete becomes partial weight bearing. And full weight bearing should be started when ambulation performs without limping. So when you see that the patient is partial weight bearing having pain, full weight bearing can only be started when he can start off with full weight bearing started when ambulation becomes pain free, there is no limping, and running should be done when ambulation is pain free. You understand? So things are in a progressive way. And how do you decide when to run? You ask the patient to hop on the affected side, and that hopping, if the hopping is painless, then we can make him run. And how we can achieve that is through pull exercises, because you start off with the exercises without putting too much of load on the ankle joint. And how you can take off the load from the ankle joint? By making him exercise on the water and working him with the principle of buoyancy. Starting with a pull exercise makes the player run on a high water level, that is, put the water level up till the xiphoid process. The maximum amount of around 50, more than 50% of the weight is gone off from the body on the ankle joints, and you start off with that and eventually get the player in a shallow water, into the shallow water, reduce the level of water on the body, and that will put more weight on the ankle joint. So this is how you progress, and progression is made by making the player from the pool on the track, flat surface, ideally track. Initially start the player jog in a straight line and walk in a curved path, progress from jogging in the entire path, then progress to sprinting in a straight line with increasing speed, jumping, hopping on both legs, and then progress to single leg. Once the upper level of all sequences are reached, the athlete may return to limited practice, which may include early teaching and fundamental drills. Now this we need to understand, that it's not that you have completed the rehab protocol that you can send the player entirely and go and play the entire session. No, you have to put him very in a progressive way. First you need to make him do only the warm up with the team, not the entire training session, only warm up, and see his response, how does he moves, how does he sprint, and all those movement with the ball, without the ball. And then you increase the duration of his play each day, so that he can absorb the intensity, because your player is coming from a long duration of off from the field. They are not doing any activity or footballing activity due to injury. They are coming from a rehab. So you need to put him in a gradual way, not just immediately from 0 to 100 go and play. No, it's not happen. The chances of re-injury will be very high. Now rehab protocol, you have to make up a rehab protocol in first acute phase. Acute phase timing of grade 1 is 1 to 3 days, grade 2 2 to 4 days, and grade 3 3 to 7 days. What is the goal of your rehabilitation in this phase? Is decrease swelling, pain, protection from re-injury, and maintain appropriate weight bearing status. How do you protect and how do you decrease pain and re-injury? Is by taping, functional bracing, cast if required, sometimes in grade 2 and often in grade 3. Rest. What all modalities you have, what are the techniques you have to do icing? It's game ready, ice bag, cryo cuff ice machine, compression, elastic wrap, vasopneumatic pump. Elevation is done with putting the pillows under the leg while they sleep. Subacute phase timing grade 1 2 to 4 days, grade 2 3 to 5 days, and grade 3 4 to 8 days. What are the goals in subacute phase? Is decrease swelling, decrease pain, increase free range of motion, begins with strengthening and proprioception training, and protection if required. Modalities of decreasing pain and swelling is ice bath, contrast bath, high voltage pulse galvanic stimulation, ultrasound, cross friction massage, and orthosis if required. Weight bearing from partial weight bearing as symptoms permit. Progress from partial weight bearing to full weight bearing if there is no sign of antalgic gait. Therapeutic exercises, active range of motion, strengthening proprioception, stretching exercises, and joint mobilization to increase range of motion of dorsiflexion and erosion inversion as the movement permits. Rehabilitative phase. Grade 1 takes around 1 week, grade 2 2 weeks, grade 3 3 weeks. Goals: increase pain-free range of motion, progress strengthening, progress proprioception, and pain-free weight bearing exercises. We need to now progress from the basic to the more complicated strengthening and proprioception so that the early return to play is possible. Therapeutic exercises are gastrocnemius soleus, stretching and joint mobilization. Strengthening exercises include heel raise, toe raise, stairs up, quarter squat. Eccentric exercises to be employed using TheraBand and body weight as well. Isokinetic exercises can be done. Proprioception, what are the tools you have for proprioception? Bobble board exercises, ankle disc and Boshu. Basically, I'm giving you the basic idea. On these are the equipments on which you can do the exercises, and lots of hundreds of variations of exercises you have, and each exercises depends upon the particular sport. You can mimic the sporting activity using all these kinds of tools in your rehab process. Continue all the modalities for pain and swelling, and support taping and bracing to be done to avoid re-injury. Now return to play. Grade 1 sprains 1 to 2 weeks, grade 2 2 to 3 weeks, and grade 3 3 to 4 weeks. Goal: regain full strength, normal biomechanics, return to participation, protection and strengthening of any mild residual instability if there. Therapeutic exercises continue progression of range of motion and strengthening. Sport specific strengthening and training are imperative. Now you need to do more of sports specific rehab, sport specific training. The usual one you did before in the initial phase, now you have to be a little more sport specific. Running progression, as I mentioned earlier, running progression, you jog and walk, then just sprint and walk, jog, then sprint, then you do figure of 8, that is change of direction, zigzag cutting, agility, that is a back pedal, side stepping, carioca, plyometric, which are specific to each sport. Now this is one important question which you will be asked as a physio. You need to answer this: when the player is expected to play the match, the competition. You have done the rehab, you have done the price protocol, you did the rehabilitation perfectly, okay. Now is your player fit enough to play the competitive match? We need to answer. One research say that a minimum of 6 consecutive training sessions in football is required before playing a match. That means your player after the rehabilitation is undergoing minimum of 6 training sessions, continuous training session, and he shouldn't have any complaint with the ankle. He's performing 100%, full complete training session. Then only he can play the match, or else he won't. Now return to play, there is a study done, return to play in athlete following ankle injury. What are the things they did in this? They have mentioned regarding functional test, what all the functional tests is required to make the player back on the pitch. Those are number 4, basically 4 tests are there: dorsiflexion lunge test, star excursion test, agility test, and vertical jump test. Dorsiflexion lunge test is a weight bearing test performed by placing the foot perpendicular to the wall and lunge the knee towards the wall. The foot is subsequently moved farther away from the wall until the maximum range of dorsiflexion is achieved. That means you will move the foot away from the wall till the heel raises off the floor for achieving dorsiflexion. The heel should not be lifted from the floor and the subtalar joint is locked. When you're performing the test, you need to make sure that the heel does not lift. But if the heel starts lifting, that means you have achieved the maximum dorsiflexion. Now you have to measure the distance. Till your heel should not lift, that means you're having good amount of dorsiflexion. Minimum distance is 9 to 10 centimeter. If it is less, you need to start working again, because the distance from the wall of the foot from the wall is measured, and it's less than, it's considered as restricted. Means you still need to work on your ankle dorsiflexion range of motion. Now how does the player will compensate for stiff dorsal dorsiflexion? By increasing hip flexion and inhibiting knee flexion as well. This test is a predictive of future injuries in cricket and soccer. So as you can see, in a weight bearing position, the ankle dorsiflexes and with the knee touching the wall. Now the distance between the toes and the wall is measured and it's recorded. Star excursion balance test to determine unilateral balance and dynamic neuromuscular control. The Y balance test is an instrumental version of star excursion balance test. It only measures three components: anterior, posterior medial and posterior lateral of star excursion balance test, because anterior medial component is the most of all performed in original 8 components of star excursion balance test. If the player can perform at posterior medial, it comprises of completing the 8 component of star excursion balance. This test is sensitive to ankle instability. See, the top one was this top picture. The above picture is a star excursion and the lower one is Y balance test, which is a instrumental version of star excursion balance test. Agility T test. Agility measured in multiple direction. The athlete must navigate in T-shape course, the horizontal and longitudinal arm in 10 yards each, and the typical time frame which is considered to be normal in athlete is 8.9 to 13.5 should be there before going to play. So you start off with the start line with the red marker up. You can see it's a 10-meter distance. Start from there, go in the middle and side steps. You need to take side steps towards 2, again coming back with side steps towards 3, again returning back to the first one and back pedal towards the finish line from where he started. Vertical jump test. It evaluates strength, speed, energy and dexterity and estimate power jump. The athletes squat and jump until into full extension, reaching the cardboard disc above. I'll show you the instrument. The name of the instrument which is used to test vertical jump is Vertex. The distance jump is measured and the reliability of the test estimated of explosive powers of lower extremity. Means it basically measured the explosive power of the lower limb. So this is basically the instrument which we call as Vertex. They also say return to play is not only the physiological aspect and physiological factor. Psychological assessment needs to be done. It's very, very important. Whether the player is psychologically fit for return to play or not is need to be assessed. So data says about 5 to 19% of athletes experience psychological stress following injury. Stress increases the risk of athletic injury. If your player is out due to injury from the field for a long time, they are getting fear, they are getting demotivated, they are getting loss of confidence is there, demoralization is also there. So those players have the risk of injuries become very high if they are not been psychologically rehabilitated. Rehabilitation following injury has an adverse effect by loss of confidence, fear, anxiety. An athlete should be demonstrate psychological readiness prior to return to play. So this is very, very important. We also need an approval from the psychologist, sports psychologist, before return to play. Before the player he should be like, okay, this player has did the psychological assessment and he is good to go. He doesn't have any kind of fear, anxiety or loss of confidence or something, because of fear will lead to re-injury, because the player after the injury will always try to protect his injured part, and while protection he won't be able to perform, he won't be able to play, and that could be that is very much visible when we are seeing him outside the field when he is playing. So when athlete demonstrate apprehension, fear, anxiety are at much risk of re-injury and deleterious effect on athletic performance. So now the injury prevention program. Your player is playing and injury prevention program consists of 4 components: ankle mobility, strength, proprioception, plyometric. A study done in one of the journals of strength and conditioning, they found the factors, the component which is responsible, contributes the most in reducing injuries as an injury prevention program is strengthening, followed by proprioception, then multiple exposure programs, and stretching is the minimum component that works in injury prevention program. Strengthening is maximum. As per FIFA medical guidelines, it says that when the ankle gets an injury, they need to be taped for around 6 to 12 months following the injury, because they say why. The reason is the ligament takes a lot of time to heal. It's not just that the ligament, we say that if the grade 1 it's supposed to be healed within 1 to 7 days, grade 2 21 days, and grade 3 takes 3 months. When the ligament gets injured, as the ligament tears, the proprioceptive loss is there. The proprioceptors are lost. When the ligament heals from the scar, but the ligament does not gain back its original tensile strength as it was before the injury. One research says that the ligament takes around 12 weeks to 30 to 40 to 50 weeks to gain back its 85 to 90% of its tensile strength. So obviously it's not possible to keep the player for out of the pitch for such a long duration, but what we can do by application of taping, we can stimulating the mechanoreceptors around the joint, and that can help in preventing the injuries and keeping the ligament safe. Basically, ligament also heals the same way as the bone do. Bone gets healed within a couple of weeks, but the bone remodeling takes around 2 years depending upon the type and tonographical location of the bone. Similarly do the ligament. Ligament gets healed, but the ligament has certain strength, and that strength regain takes long time than what is been seen. That proprioceptors development, that original tensile strength which they had before the injury, takes around 12 to 40 to 50 weeks. So that's the reason of reoccurrence of injury. That's a very important reason of reoccurrence, because after the injury the ligament is healed, but that particular ligament doesn't have that sufficient tensile strength which they used to had it before, and that's lead to injury. So we need to understand these factors and plan the injury prevention program. The injury prevention program plays a very important role in preventing injuries. Ankle mobility, ankle strengthening, and proprioception plyometric. I'll be showing at the end of my session a video on very basic exercises, and I tell you it entirely depends upon the physiotherapist how you approaches with the rehab program from basic to the complex one. Very basic exercise I'll be showing, but you need to continue the rehab program, the injury prevention program, even after the injury. I basically designed my injury prevention program for a minimum of 2 months, and I asked them to keep on doing every successive day, every alternate days, 3 times a week. You need to do it, because that will reduce the risk of re-injury, and that will also help in regaining the proprioceptors, activating the proprioceptors, and increase the tensile strength of the ligament. So I conclude with Price protocol should be the first primary intervention, and it should be given importance, because most of the time your Price protocol is taken too lightly. But if this Price protocol is been done with lot of importance, this will give a very good result, and this is the first step towards the rehab. If the first step is taken wrong, then the next consecutive steps will be very much difficult. Early weight bearing should be done for better recovery. When the pain permits, immediately start off with weight bearing activities as soon as the pain permits. Proprioception exercises should be emphasized. It's very important. Proprioception exercises are very important, because proprioception is the thing which is lost following ankle injury, following the ligament injury, and this should be given importance. Gradual progression should be made in the rehabilitation as well as in return to play. Progression should be gradual. Many a times you may come across that the today the player is very much okay with the rehabilitation, he is feeling better, he's improving. Tomorrow he might say no, the play that he's having pain or something. So the progression in the rehabilitation is never a linear curvature, it may go up and down. So you don't have to be worried, you don't have to be like you have to go back, just to take one step back with the rehab protocol and progress further and progress again. Okay, so don't worry about the gradual, you need to progress every day, you have to see improvement every day, you have to see improvement. Sometimes it may not happen usually, but you should always progress of improvement, think about improvement, but sometimes it may not happen in the practical sense. Okay, psychological assessment is as important as physical assessment before return to play. So as I said, psychology plays a very very important role when the injury is of long duration. Long term injury is having a very detrimental effect on the psychology of an athlete. So you need to consult a sports psychologist, make the player counsel for it, him, him work with you, and that will also help in easing your work, because most of the time when the athlete is working with you, he is physically present with you, but there are a lot of things going on inside his mind which because of which is not focused and attentive towards the rehabilitation protocol. So your sports psychologist will definitely help you in this to gain back his attention in the rehab program. This guy's name is Ravi Rana Bahadur. He's one of our best youth footballer in the academy as well as in the country. He represented India in under 18 SAFF Cup, and he is one of the reason why the India became champion in under 18 SAFF Cup in 2019. He's a very hardworking and focused boy, one of the most disciplined boy I have worked with. He had an ankle injury and he is showing some of the basic exercises, as you can see. This is the goal which leads to India SAFF Cup champion under 18 in 2019. He scored a goal in the extra time, that is, you can see in 91st minute he scored. Ravi Rana Bahadur. And here the team became champion. As you can see, Ravi, this is the guy. When there is effort, attitude and desire, nothing is impossible. Thank you so much.